Hello. Welcome to the Politics Chicks podcast. I'm Monica Healy.
And I'm Christy Branham.
Today, we are joined by Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who's running for the U.S. Senate seat being vacated by Senator Tina Smith.
We recently had Senator Smith on the podcast and appreciated hearing about her decision to retire and her reflections on public service. Today, we're excited to continue that conversation with one of the candidates hoping to succeed her.
Peggy, welcome to the Politics Chicks. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Your husband posted something last night, and I replied to it, "We're interviewing Peggy tomorrow, and we are positively giddy."
Well, that's awesome.
That's true.
I'm super excited to be here, and my husband is my biggest fan, so I'm pretty lucky, and I know that we
Aww.
all know that husbands named Tom make the best husbands.
That is right. That is right.
I'm going to
And
put
my
a plug
husband's
in
name
for
is Tom,
I'm
too.
going to put a plug in for Scott's too.
Absolutely, I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. Well, Senator Smith said she's ready for the next chapter after decades in public service. And when you learned that she was retiring, what made you decide this was the moment to step forward?
Well, I'd say a couple things. One of the things about Senator Tina Smith is that she is incredibly effective. And I've been friends with her for a very long time. I absolutely consider her to be a mentor as well. And the worst part of running for this seat is that it's her seat and we won't get to serve together.
Yeah.
She'll be on speed dial, right? But she made the path from lieutenant governor to Senator Cool in Minnesota. And so but I have to say, after watching her lead and be, I think, an effective voice, but really a voice of real people and being super clear why she does the work and who she's serving, I wanted to continue that work and, understanding how much people are struggling right now. I'm running to make sure that people can afford the lives they want to live. So much of my life has been in service to children and families. And so thought I could continue that work in the U.S. Senate. So I went for it.
Yay. Well, we're glad you did.
That piece about affordability that you just mentioned, you have shared pretty openly about your family's experience with Medicaid, SNAP, Section 8 housing, childcare assistance, and how that's shaped your life. And how have those experiences influenced the policies you're most passionate about today?
Well, I would say, as a kid who grew up on the margins, I talk a lot about carrying a box of government commodity cheese under my arm like a football, right home from the food shelf with my mom. And, you know, I think watching my mom work incredibly hard and still not be able to make it all work really influenced me. And I also know that, because of Section 8, right, which paid our rent, Medicaid, which, paid my medical bills. I was a kid with really bad asthma. That was a lifesaver for us. And the childcare assistance program allowed my mom to go back to school. She went to St. Catherine's. She's a Katie, and she got her certificate in phlebotomy. And I very explicitly remember her walking across the stage at her graduation in her bright blue cap and gown. And it was the 80s. And so remember, like, her hair, right, was huge, sort of like,
Giant hair.
like bouncing behind her. And I was 7 years old. And I remember watching her sit at the dining room table and studying after I had gone to bed. And I didn't know exactly what it all meant, but I knew that I was proud of my mom. And watching her walk across that stage, I felt like I was walking across that stage. So
Mm.
that to me is foundational for everything that I've done in my career, but also why I'm running. There are too many folks right now who feel like the bottom could fall out at any moment, or in fact, the bottom has fallen out. And I think we need more people serving in the US Senate who understand what it's like to try to stretch $20 to the end of the month. Because if we had those folks, more of those folks, more of us serving in those roles, I don't think we would have passed this big, ugly bill and wouldn't be focused on tax breaks for the ultra wealthy and people who don't need them, but would be focused on the things that would help people afford their lives, like Medicare for all, universal childcare, raising the federal minimum wage, the things that'll actually make a difference in the lives of the majority, right, of Minnesotans.
And that's one issue you've spoken passionately about is universal health care.
Mhm.
And we've heard you speak about it recently, and it's clearly something that matters deeply to you. What does universal health care look like in practical terms? And what do you think that would mean for families in Minnesota, especially?
Well, I'm a big supporter of Medicare for all. And it's important, that folks know, like, I didn't start out there. It really was traveling across the state of Minnesota and hearing directly from Minnesotans about their struggles with the high cost of healthcare. And I would say, it was even more apparent when we were traveling in greater Minnesota and in rural communities because people have, less access, fewer options for health insurance. And, talk to a lot of folks who are stringing together two or three jobs to try to make it all work. And none of those jobs, right, provide healthcare for them. So they're either purchasing healthcare, right, on the open market or are just going without care. And I talked to one woman in particular. Her name was Jessica, and she's a librarian and she's married to a farmer, and her hours are just under the thresholds of qualifying for healthcare through her employer. So they purchase healthcare. And she told me that their deductible is $16,000 a year and that she paid out of
Wow.
pocket, right, 500 bucks to go to the doctor for a simple med check for medication that's really changed her life. And her family was struggling to figure out, like, going forward, do, we continue to cover the entire family? Do we just cover the kids and she pays out of pocket, or do they just cover her? Those are impossible, decisions that families are making all across the state of Minnesota. Medicare for all, everybody, pays in. And I think, the amount of healthcare that you're going to use, right, as a 30-year-old would be different than maybe what you're using as someone who is 60. And so I think the costs there, are something that we can spread out across Americans. And right now, healthcare is incredibly expensive, and people are paying again for health insurance and not actually for health care. And oftentimes
Yes.
that is, because of the bottom line of these companies or these CEOs who are paid an exorbitant amount of money, and we go without. So this feels like to me one of the things that can be a real game changer for folks all across Minnesota, for people who are farmers, for people who don't qualify for healthcare, through their employer, or especially for young people who say, I want to grow my career. I'm interested in, pursuing other things, but I feel like I have to stay in this job because it is where I access healthcare. We can do much better. And we're one of the only, right, industrialized countries in the world who does not provide healthcare or an option for everybody to buy in.
Christy and I have often spoken about how politicians and candidates who have real lives before their lives in politics are the ones that are most effective. People that have had life experiences like you that lead them to see what the average American is going through. And I'm a retired public school teacher, and I was still teaching while Governor Walz passed the policy that gave free lunch to every school child. And you've been a strong supporter of that. What have you seen since the policy became law, and why do you believe it's an important investment?
Well, first of all, thank you for being a teacher. And
I loved it.
I would say, um, this for me is so personal. I was a kid on free and reduced price lunch. And, when there wasn't money in my account, getting that dried white bread cheese sandwich, with a container of milk, and sort of feeling like that was the lunch of shame. Um, it's uh, it's just something that we kids
No child
no.
should be made to feel that
Right,
way.
and that's just,
Mm-mm.
like, it's just something that, the choices that children should have, right, are not do you eat or not, it's do you want pizza or chicken nuggets, right? Like, those are
Right.
those are
Yeah,
the choices, and
exactly.
so This is actually something that I started working on when I was the executive director of Children's Defense Fund Minnesota. We are working to expand school breakfasts at Minnesota schools across the state. And so, working on that then as lieutenant governor and in this administration was something that was, really powerful. And to do that with advocates who I had worked shoulder to shoulder with on free breakfast, then as lieutenant governor, felt great. And so, one of my favorite things to do is to serve breakfast or lunch to kids in Minnesota schools. It is lovely to not hear. Right. The kids punching in their numbers. Right. And it's just like kids getting into line, being fed, laughing with their friends. And it's also something that I've heard from people across the state who have said, like, this has saved us so much money, especially for families who don't qualify for free and reduced price lunch, but are just, right, like make just over the thresholds
Yeah.
on average. And I'm guessing it's probably increased a bit here over the last year or so. We're saving families $1,000 a year. And that's real money. And we know achievement goes up. Sick days for kiddos, goes down. And, I'm sure, Monica, that you also saw the difference, right, that made in your students and their ability to just, yeah,
Absolutely.
eat lunch, no questions asked with their friends every day.
It's a lot easier to learn when you're fed than if you're hungry, for sure.
Absolutely.
And so we all feel like we're still drinking out of a water hose, right? Because everything is going a mile a minute, all this crud. I'm not going to swear on this podcast out of deference to you, Peggy, but all this crud that is going down. Washington is a mess. If you had to prioritize the first thing, knowing that what we really need to do is fix everything like now. If you had to prioritize one thing when you get to Washington, what is that first thing going to be?
Well, the first thing I want to do is have coffee with 99 of my colleagues, right, to build
Yes.
those relationships. I am an
Right.
organizer, right, at my core, and so that really matters to me. I want to power map the heck out of the Senate and figure out how we're going to get the things done that we have committed to doing for Minnesotans. But I think the root of much of the crud and the mess and dysfunction that we see is because of corporate money and big money in our politics. I made the commitment to not take a dime of corporate PAC money and was the easiest decision I've ever made in this campaign because I want to be beholden only to Minnesotans and to no one else. Watching that influence in our politics, I think, has has been very troubling, and I would use the word like disgusting. You shouldn't be able to
Yes.
buy these seats. These seats belong to the people. And so ending Citizens United, I think, is at the top of my
Yes.
list, right?
Yes.
I'm the candidate who's endorsed by End Citizens United in this race. And that also means that we have to get real about Supreme Court reform in order to end
Yes.
Citizens United, right?
100%.
And so all of those things, I think, working together, the next thing I would say would be Medicare for all. And on the path to Medicare for all, we have to get rid of prior authorization because your doctor should be deciding, right? What kind of health care you receive and not some, dude behind a desk. And I would say that all of these things are just, again, grounded in who benefits from things being this way right now, right?
Right.
Because it's not you and it's not me. It is, these big corporations, it's these extremist billionaires at the top. And, it's folks who so far in this race have spent $12 million so far in, super PACs and these dark money groups to try to defeat me. And we are people powered. I think 2026 is the year, right, for people powered grassroots campaigns. And we've always been able to demonstrate here in Minnesota that organized people can beat organized money. We're going to work hard to do it again. But it is the most expensive primary that we have ever seen in Minnesota, the bombardment of ads. And we're just taking it to the people and are going to be in community, shoulder to shoulder with folks, building these relationships. And I think that will be our secret sauce. But we just are seeing right now what this kind of out of control spending looks like. And ultimately, I would like to see us get to publicly financed campaigns.
Yeah.
I think we should all be thanking everybody that is working on the ground, doing the grassroots work and eschewing some of those corporate donations. So we appreciate that. And we also see how campaigns can just be exhausting. Like we're scrambling to get in our little bit of time with you. So what's keeping you grounded?
Well, a couple of things. I just want to be really candid. I am running on caffeine and adrenaline. And so, you
Same,
know,
same.
and right now, literally caffeine. I've got my New Kids on the Block mug
Oh my God, I love
here.
that.
Bye, bye, bye.
And but I would say for me, being really clear about why I'm doing this in the first place is what keeps me grounded. And so I have had so many conversations, right? Thousands of conversations with people all over the state about their hopes and their dreams, their struggles right now. And I get to hold those and, run for that seat and bring those stories into these spaces and into this race. That is what keeps me grounded. I'm also the mom of a 13-year-old theater kid, and so
Hmm.
watching her and Shrek the musical and supporting her as best I
Love
can.
that.
Really locking in when it is mom time is one of the things that keeps me grounded too.
Well, let's end this on a fun note because we've only got you for 2 more minutes. Um, Outside of Minnesota politics, what's your perfect day in Minnesota?
So there are 12 perfect days in Minnesota,
12.
and those are the days of the Minnesota State Fair.
The state
I
fair.
was just gonna say the state fair.
Yeah.
I love the fair. It is my absolute favorite thing in Minnesota. I've got my outfit picked out for the first day of the state fair, and last year Elizabeth Warren and I did the fair together, which was super fun. But it is, I think, the best of Minnesota. If you want to, go look at award-winning baked goods. If you want to,
Crop art.
right? If you want to see
Seed art.
crop art,
Yep.
if you want to see TLC and In Vogue, I'm going to that show, right? Like there's so much there for folks. And again, it's agriculture, it's education, it's our, entrepreneurs, it's politics, and it is every kind of food you can possibly imagine on a stick. I love the fair. So those are the 12 best days of summer and the 12 best days in Minnesota. So I'm super excited about it. And I know that you also probably wanted to talk about earrings. And so I will just do that briefly because that's kind of my thing, if that's okay.
Yes, I kind of skipped over that question, but yes, tell us about the earrings because we
Well,
love
it's for
them.
me.
And for people
Mhm.
that are just listening and can't see her right now, they're impressive earrings, but we've seen you with earrings that are like 12 inches long and like it makes my
Love
earlobes
them.
hurt.
If you can't slam them in the car door, right? I don't want them. But I would say this I think part of this opportunity of running and serving in office is to show people what it means to do so authentically. And if there are, especially young women and girls who can see themselves reflected, right, in leaders, I think it makes it so much easier to see themselves, right, pursuing those roles. The other thing that I like to do is to use my platform to showcase Native artists. And so I'll do just like tell you a couple things. So I'm taking off these earrings for the folks who are listening. But they are beaded, they are
Oh,
black and white with
beautiful.
a little gold. And
And look at
and
your
yes, I've
nails.
got my rainbow nails for Pride. Stay tuned for
That's
what
awesome.
they'll be next. It's like an hour that I get every 3 weeks just to sit and be quiet. These earrings were from a native artist when I was up at I went home onto the powwow at White Earth, and I was like, oh, those are so beautiful. And she was wearing them, and she's like, oh my gosh, I love yours too. And we literally traded earrings. So it was great. And then I will just show you
That's
these because these are
awesome.
some of my favorites. These are from a First Nations artist in Canada. But my favorite movie of all time is Labyrinth. And so these are
I love
beaded
it.
Jareth, Goblin King. earrings.
Wow.
These are like 2-hour earrings because they're like pretty big. And then it's Sarah, and
Heavy.
this is from the ballroom scene. But I saw these online, and I was like, you know what? This nerdy Jim Henson fan is gonna have to get those earrings. So they all have a story. And then one last one, which these are some of my faves. Again, pretty big, but very light. These are actually from a local African immigrant artist woman called Chosen and Free. And I am obsessed with her designs, and she is just phenomenal.
Love
And
it.
so, whatever I can do to showcase these artists and entrepreneurs, and also, look good doing it. I'm all about it.
You're always like an ever-changing canvas.
Yeah, and you mentioned White Earth, and I just want to throw this out there because I have a connection to White Earth. One of my dearest friends grew up in Minoman, and her husband is on the tribal council there, and she passed away a couple of years ago because she had liver cancer that was missed because of the lack of access to healthcare up there. And when I was going through a rough time, she would burn sage for me. And I did not know about the boarding schools, the Native American boarding schools, before I met her. And they just shared so much of their culture with me. We stayed with them a few days and got to go to Natawash and see the reservation before we went to the headwaters of the Mississippi, just to be a witness to that situation up there in that community and its needs. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that I have that connection, and that when I see you embracing your Native American roots, it makes me happy because it makes me remember Kim.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm not running to make history, but it is
Right.
absolutely time that we had a Native American woman serving in the U.S. Senate for the first time. And I think it's just good for our democracy. When
Yes.
our elected officials accurately reflect the communities they seek to represent, when we try to get towards parity for every community, I think that just makes things better. This we've got 11, tribal governments, 7 Ojibwe reservations, and 4 Dakota communities here in Minnesota. And the work that we've been able to do in our administration to strengthen those tribal state relations is something that I'm really eager to do in Washington D.C. But also, at no time can I stop, being a Native woman. That's not a hat that I can take on and off. And, I just say like one more thing is that there are only 4 moms with kids under the age of 18 serving in the US Senate. And
Huh.
Yeah.
boy, can't you tell. So I think,
Right.
Mhm.
that's also, I think, a viewpoint that I'm really eager to bring because, when you have to figure out childcare for the summer or, how are you going to make sure that your kiddo gets to all their doctor's appointments? Or, you're just worried about, how they're seeing the world and how they're being impacted by, AI or social media. It's all as perspective that I want to bring. So I'm just really grateful that we've been able to connect today. And I'm so grateful for the work that you guys do, all of the time to make politics fun, right? And accessible to people. And that's what it's all about. Like this is people deserve to have their voices heard. They deserve, to feel like they can be part of this. And I think that's what the two of you do all the time. So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And because we're short on time, I will put the link to your campaign and your Act Blue in our show notes so that people can keep up with what you're doing, keep up with your upcoming events, and also, if they so choose, they can donate to your campaign as well.
Well, thanks so much for that.
Before we wrap up, is there anything you want to add? Things that you think the voters should hear before they go to the polls?
Well, I would say that this race, I think, is a choice between someone who is beholden to the people of Minnesota versus someone, right, who is beholden to corporate PACs and special interests. And I would say, if people are worried about the state of the world right now, and Minnesotans are worried, you can go early vote. Early voting is open. You can vote, anytime today and leading up to August 11th, which is the primary. I love to see that absentee ballot, Monica. Amazing. And that should be right? The most powerful tool in our toolbox, and we get to determine what that is. So I would just, ask for your support and, just so grateful again to have this opportunity. And people can visit peggyflanagan.com if they want to get more involved.
Great. And like I said, when I spoke to you briefly at the CD8 convention, you're the candidate that we've endorsed for this race. So we're behind you 100%, and we're doing what we can to help you get across the finish line.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to have your endorsement. And we're gonna get this done here over the next 30 days or so. So thanks so much for your endorsement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for being on today.
Thanks so much. Take care.
To our listeners, if you are finding meaning in the stories that we are sharing, if something moves you, challenges you, makes you see the world a little differently, please like, comment, and share. It helps more than you know.
And follow us everywhere at The Politics Chicks on Substack, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.
Thanks for being a part of our community. Keep shining your light so we can find each other in the dark.
And remember, we're stronger together.
Bye, all.